Now we're on the air.
Okay.
But you see, I ain't even mad. I ain't even mad that we're 6 minutes late. I don't mad that y'all been talking. Because tonight's a party. This is a celebration.
Oh, boy.
You should know because you're also dressed up for the occasion.
Yeah.
Does anyone want to take a stab anywhere as to why this night is special?
Got a girlfriend. It's before Christmas. That's one reason.
No. No. This is our 40th lesson in the Minor Prophets.
Oh, really?
And I found that out through complete happenstance. I don't, believe it or not, as meticulously detailed as I am, I do not keep track of how many lessons we've gone through. But I do have a playlist of all of the lessons. And there was 39 videos in that playlist, which makes tonight number 40. So if you think that this is taking long to get through the Minor Prophets, just imagine how long this would be if Lester was teaching this. We were only going through like 2 verses per week. You know, this would have taken a lot longer. But we covered 5 books last summer in 2022. Haggai, Obadiah, Nahum, Habakkuk, and Zephaniah. Those took 12 lessons. So we were already like well past the initial 12 that we started out with. Since May of this year, we've covered Joel, Amos, Jonah, Micah, and now we're what?
She needs the Bible.
Here. You can steal Lester's. There you
I'm sorry.
go. Okay. Where was I? Since May of this year, we've covered 4 books: Joel, Amos, Jonah, Micah, and now Zechariah, for 27 total lessons. So 27 plus 12 is 39 tonight, makes 40. We've hopefully come a long way since we started this study. And after this, the only books we have are Malachi and Hosea. And those have a combined 18 total chapters plus what we have left of Zechariah. August is 32 weeks away. So we're going to just barely finish this before I depart, ascend back into heaven or wherever I'm going after this. So anyway, but yeah, I was planning on wearing this anyway. I wore this to the pastor's the pastor's Christmas dinner thing that they had like 2 weeks ago, because those things are terrible, because you go and you sit by somebody and they asked you, well, how many people does your church run? And you ask them, well, how many people does your church run? And then one or the other of you goes away feeling really good about yourself at the end of the night, and the other goes away feeling really sad about themselves. And you basically just talk church politics for an hour, and then at the end of the night, you get a prize. So anyway, but I wore this because I figured if I, being forced to show up to this, I might as well make it fun. So,
Why not?
but, I was already planning on wearing this anyway, and then I figured out this was our 40th lesson, so I figured, this just gives me even more of an excuse to wear this. Plus, it's Christmassy. So, anyway, all right. But I guess on a more serious note, we are still in the visions. Next week, yeah, because Christmas is on Monday. So yeah, we're gonna meet next week. Next week, we're gonna wrap up the 8 visions. So we're covering Vision 6 and Vision 7 tonight. Next week is Vision 8, and then after next week, it's everything else in Zechariah that happens after the 8 visions. So we're almost done, and we're going to try to piece some of this together. This is laid out kind of weird, and you'll probably notice this where you do have a chart that I've already filled out for you, because it was a lot easier for me to just fill this out than for me to try to repeat this 20 times while everyone filled this out. And yep. See, someone already agreed with me. But and it's placed kind of weird because it's placed in between, there's like a blank where you like would put in an answer, and then this chart, and then there's another blank. But it'll all hopefully make sense whenever we get there. So anyway, the first vision, or I guess the sixth vision, the first vision that we're covering tonight, is only 4 verses. It's very short. So we're going to read that, and we're gonna camp out there for a little bit. So chapter 5, verse 1. And I turned and raised my eyes and saw there a flying scroll. He said to me, that is the interpreting angel, not the scroll. He said to me, what do you see? So I answered, I see a flying scroll. Its length is 20 cubits and its width 10 cubits. He said to me, this is the curse that goes out over the face of the whole earth. Every thief shall be expelled according to this side of the scroll, and every perjurer shall be expelled according to that side of it. I will send out the curse, says the Lord of hosts. It shall enter the house of the thief and the house of the one who swears falsely by my name. It shall remain in the midst of his house and consume it with its timber and stones. So, yeah, the first, I guess, question that I asked was, how is this different from the visions that preceded? This is actually a very simple answer. There's not a whole lot of theological depth. You don't really have to go digging. This is a very obvious answer. Vision 1. I'm just going to kind of cherry pick some quotes from these visions. Vision 1, I am returning to Jerusalem with mercy. The Lord will again comfort Zion and will again choose Jerusalem. That'll preach right there. That's a message people want to hear. Vision 2, these are the horns that scattered Judah so that no one could lift up its head, but the craftsmen are coming to terrify them, to cast out the horns of the nations that lifted up their horn against the land of Judah to scatter it. Again, very encouraging, very, very positive. You were oppressed, and now your oppressors will be oppressed. That'll preach. Vision number 3, for I, says the Lord, will be a wall of fire all around her, and I will be the glory in her midst. That one's going to preach. We like that one. Vision 4, I will remove the iniquity of the land in that day. I mean, hey, that's a Southern Baptist sermon if I've ever heard one. Vision number 5, not by might nor by power, but by my spirit, says the Lord of hosts. Vision 6, this is where we're at right now. This is the curse that goes out over the face of the whole earth. So I guess, right, if you had to write like one thing to try to put here, the previous 5 visions were ones of hope and blessing. Right. So examples, Joshua and Zerubbabel were empowered. Jerusalem was encouraged, that kind of thing. The previous 5 visions were ones of hope and blessing. Now the whole world, in quotes, and we're going to get to that, the whole world is being cursed. So kind of a different emphasis than the previous visions, which is one of the reasons why, how I formatted, I guess, our study guide for the first 5 visions is like completely different than how I'm formatting it for vision 6 and 7. But anyway, so that's how it's different from the visions that preceded. Well, how is it similar to the visions that preceded? Well, number 1, how it begins. How it begins is similar. The 6th vision is very similar to the 2nd and 3rd visions. The 2nd vision, the one of the horns, it begins in chapter 1, verse 18. Then I raised my eyes and looked. The 2nd vision, chapter 2, verse 1. Then I raised my eyes and looked. And of course, the 6th vision, chapter 5, verse 1. Then I turned and raised my eyes. So it begins very similar to the 2nd and 3rd visions. The second thing that's similar is the phrase, what do you see? This phrase is absent from the first 4 visions. It does appear in vision 5, though. And that's really where we're going to kind of camp out, is how is vision 6 related to vision 5? But we'll get to that. So in vision 1, Zechariah asked the interpreting angel, my Lord, what are these? In vision 2, he again asks, what are these? In vision 3, he doesn't ask the interpreting angel anything, but he asks the man who's going out with the measuring line to go measure Jerusalem. He asked him, "Where are you going?" So he doesn't really ask the interpreting angel a question at all. In vision 4, there's not a question from the interpreting angel or a question from Zechariah about, what's being seen in the vision. But in vision 5, we have the same phrase that's found in vision 6, which is, "What do you see?" Found in 4:2 and 5:2. And Zechariah tells the angel what he sees in both vision 5 and in vision 6. And after Zechariah describes what he sees in the 5th vision, he asks, what are these? And in the 5th vision, the angel doesn't actually answer his question necessarily, but he gives an oracle of encouragement to Zerubbabel, which kind of keys you in that this whole thing is talking about Zerubbabel. And here in the 6th vision, after Zechariah describes what he sees, there isn't really a question from Zechariah about what it means. The angel just begins to interpret anyway in verse 3. So the third thing that's similar is the angel interprets, right? So you have how it begins is similar to the 2nd and 3rd visions. What do you see? Similar to the 5th vision. And then the angel interpreting after Zechariah describes what he saw, what he sees, is also similar to the 5th vision. So then, what is the point, right? What is the point that vision 6 closely follows vision 5? Well, for one, and I kind of brought this up like before we got into the visions, so it's been a while. We don't exactly know how these visions are related in the fact of, how should they be organized, or rather, how should they be categorized, right? Which visions are sort of related to the other visions, right? And there's like a whole, dozen different ways that people have tried to categorize these 8 visions, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, or 1, 4, 8, 2, 3, 5, or, there's 1,000 different ways that people try to categorize this. We don't exactly know how they're related, but everyone agrees that they are related, and we know that they're related. Should we organize them based on their similarities and their differences? Is there any real thematic overlap between the visions that are similar in terms of their structure? Yeah, we don't really know, but obviously these visions are related and all do go together to tell sort of an overarching, overall, mostly a word of encouragement about, okay, we have Joshua and Zerubbabel, so we're rebuilding the temple, we're reinstituting temple worship, and sort of hopefully a moral revival that is to come in Judah. So anyway, obviously, they are related in some sense. And then the second way, the second idea here of like why do we care about this? Why do we care that Vision 5 or Vision 6 is very, closely formatted and structured to Vision 5? Vision 5 was probably like the most abstract vision that we covered, right? And they're all sort of abstract to an extent. Vision 1 is abstract. That's probably like the second most abstract, because Vision 1 deals with these angelic horse riders who are patrolling the earth. They're abstract, right? They're not seen, they're not tangible by people on the earth, but they are on the earth, right? So they're not completely removed from the physical realm that we live in, right? Vision 2 is a little bit more straightforward. The horns represents the people who have oppressed Judah, and the craftsmen are these people who are going to oppress the oppressors, right? Oppress the horns. Obviously, these nations who have oppressed Judah, well, that's not really abstracted from our physical, what we can see, because, what they could have seen anyway, because they would have known who the nations were who would have oppressed them. So this is very much something that's happening on the earth. You have Vision 3, And this one's, pretty abstract as well. There's, a guy who's going to go measure Jerusalem. And, he's told there's no need because God himself will be a wall of fire all around Jerusalem. So that one's also pretty abstract because you have basically in the heavenly council this guy who is going down to earth. And, before he can get there, he's stopped because he's told, well, there's no need because God's going to basically protect Jerusalem. So it's abstract in the sense that, obviously the fact that this begins in the heavenly council, sort of the unseen spiritual realm, I mean, that's like abstract from what we can perceive. But also, I mean, he was going down to earth. So that, is what we can see and experience. Vision 4, Joshua is purified for priestly service. That's something that obviously is very much on the earthly, physical level, right? Joshua was a real person. He was living, he was breathing. People would have known who this was. This is something that they can kind of wrap their heads around. Vision 5, like I said, was probably like the most abstract. And, there are some things that are very physical. People could have wrapped their heads around, on our plane of existence, so to speak, right? We have the 2 olive trees, which we identified as Joshua and Zerubbabel, real people, living, breathing. So that's sort of our plane of existence. But then, right, we also had like this whole eyes of God, which we never actually were able to identify. And this is abstract because you have like the horse riders from the first vision, and they're abstract because obviously they're like angelic and they're from the heavenly council. So they can't be perceived with our natural eyes, but they're still on the earth. The eyes of God, which we weren't able to identify, is also sort of originating from the heavenly council in the spiritual realm, but they're not actually on the earth, most likely, right? I mean, I guess there are interpretive options that would sort of place it there, but most likely they're not even on the earth at all. So we're dealing with something now that is like in the part of the unseen spiritual realm, abstract from our reality, so to speak, and now is like not even on earth at all, in the 5th vision. And so, right, we're dealing with, the horns, which are oppressive nations. That's seen, that's known. We're dealing with Joshua or Zerubbabel. That's seen and that's known. In the 6th vision, we're dealing with the curse. And, that's pretty abstract too, because this is a curse that hasn't actually landed yet. So it's not something that's, at the time that this is given, really seen and known. And it's just sort of flying around, and we're going to get to all that. But it isn't really tangible, right? In the same way that like an oppressive nation or a person is. The scroll's origins, where it exists, is in heaven, essentially, among the heavenly council where Zechariah finds himself, where these visions are being given. So yeah, it's not tangible, unlike the 2nd and 3rd vision. It's not presently on earth like the angelic riders of the 1st vision. And it's similar to the eyes of God, which are not tangible, not seen, and not presently on the earth. So that probably didn't make a lot of sense, but like we're going to reemphasize this about 20 times, so hopefully it'll make sense. Third point under this, in these 8 visions, we're dealing not only with people and nations which we can see, but there's a spiritual plane which is unseen, in which we're also dealing with. And that is sort of a rephrasing of everything that I just said. But right, Zechariah is lucky enough to get to witness something that like not even in the Bible a lot of people got to experience, right? The spiritual realm, right? The heavenly council, however you want to think about this, right? Sort of how God and the angels operate. And this was, right, obviously a huge privilege, blessing, however you want to put it, for Zechariah. And obviously, because we get to read about it, this is a huge blessing and privilege for us as well. So anyway, we're not just dealing with the physical plane of existence, but we're also dealing with the spiritual plane of existence throughout these 8 visions. So anyway, the scroll is from God. How do we know that this scroll is from God? Other than the fact that it's in the Bible, so obviously it's from God, right? We're dealing with something unseen in our world. It lies in heaven, waiting. So how do we know that this is actually from God? So, right, first of all, the curse on the scroll is a divine curse or a covenantal curse. So, if you think back to the very beginning of the book of Ezekiel, right, I think this is actually just the entirety of the 2nd chapter of Ezekiel, because I think there's only like 10 verses, but I copy and pasted it, so I'm going to read it anyway. He said to me, "Son of man, stand up on your feet, and I will speak to you." As he spoke to me, the Spirit came into me and raised me to my feet. And I heard him speaking to me. He said, "Son of man, I am sending you to the Israelites, to a rebellious nation that has rebelled against me. They and their ancestors have been in revolt against me to this very day. The people to whom I am sending you are obstinate and stubborn. Say to them, this is what the sovereign Lord says. Whether they listen or fail to listen, for they are a rebellious people, they will know that a prophet has been among them. You, son of man, do not be afraid of them or their words. Do not be afraid. Through briars or thorns are all around you, and you live among scorpions. Do not be afraid of what they say, or be terrified them, though they are a rebellious people. You must speak my words to them, whether they listen or fail to listen, for they are rebellious. You son of man, listen to what I say to you. Do not rebel like that rebellious people. Open your mouth and eat what I give you." And this is really the important part. Then I looked and saw a hand stretched out to me. In it was a scroll, which he unrolled before me, and on both sides of it were written lament, mourning, and woe. So in Ezekiel, we have a scroll that has mourning and woe, which was given to Ezekiel by God. Similarly, in Zechariah 5, we have a scroll with a curse written on it. Now, it's not exactly explicitly said, God gave this to me, right? But we have the parallel here of, okay, we have mourning, we have woe. In this instance, in Zechariah, we have a curse. So, yeah, also, the fact that all these visions are sort of taking place either like in or with members of the heavenly council, right? This is sort of what we're dealing with here, is a scroll from God with a curse on it, specifically a covenantal curse. The second point, right, the scroll is said to be flying, okay? I don't know about you. Granted, I haven't seen a whole lot of scrolls in my life. I ain't never seen one that can fly. That's pretty weird. And it's not just flying above the earth, but flying in and above the heavenly council, right? Flying in heaven, if you want to think of it that way. So it's undoubtedly of divine origin, and is undoubtedly a covenantal curse, right? The previous visions where Zechariah raises his eyes, there's the visions of the thorn, there's the vision of the measuring line, and both of these things originate from God, right? The horns which oppressed Judah were sent by God, right? These nations which oppressed Judah, right, were sent by God, right? Or at the very least, God, allowed it to happen. So, their origin is in that sense from God. There's also, right, the guy with the measuring line, and he was literally basically leaving the heavenly council to go down to earth and measure Jerusalem before he was stopped, somewhere along the line and told, wait, don't do that. We don't need that anymore because God's going to be a wall of fire around Jerusalem. So it's the same thing, right? This scroll as well is also originating from God and specifically from, right, the heavenly council. But unlike, right, the foreign nations which opposed Judah, the scroll, and specifically the curses on the scroll, are yet to be seen, right? This is something that, right, this is more of like a threat, more than this is something that's actually happening as it's being given. So, and then finally, actually, no, this is There's 4 points in this. Thirdly, the dimensions of the scroll itself point to the fact that this is from God. The scroll is said to be 20 cubits by 10 cubits and goes out over the face of the whole earth. Now, really, goes out over the face of the whole land. And really what this means is like land of Israel, not like every land mass on the world. This is not like a worldwide judgment against sin. This is a judgment against Judah's sin, specifically. So, but still, I mean, that we're still talking about a very massive scroll nonetheless to cover all of Judah. And I mean, obviously, you know, it is a vision and this is symbolic and we can't take everything one-to-one literally. But I mean, the idea is that this is a massive scroll with a massive curse attached to it. And then even just the whole cubit thing itself. Post-exilic scrolls usually only went up to 20 feet in length when they were unwound. And so assuming a cubit is 18 inches, which we're pretty sure it is, the scroll in Zechariah's vision was 30 feet long. So we're already 10 feet longer than like your longest post-exile scroll. Even like the Isaiah scroll from the Dead Sea Scrolls, which was like several centuries after all of this, I mean, that was only like 25 feet long, I think, maybe less. So, I mean, we're still like, this is like a scroll that like nothing like this, you know, I mean, even being generous and going, you know, giving it a few centuries one way or the other. I mean, nothing like this was being used. This is not a scroll made for human use. And, you know, I will point out the dimensions of the scroll match the size of the porch from Solomon's temple. That means absolutely nothing. Literally, everyone should tell you that means nothing. There's no spiritual or thematic significance to that. It's just the same numbers. So anyway, yeah. Now we have the chart, which sort of summarizes what we've already talked about. You have the 6 visions laid out, and that's the first column. The second column is what is the introduction of the 6 visions. So you see Vision 6 matches the introductions of Visions 2 and Vision 3. And as we talked about, right, I mean, both of these things, right, the horns, which were the foreign nations, or, right, you know, this man with the measuring line, I mean, both of these were sort of originated from God, from the heavenly council, however you want to put it. So, I mean, there's a little bit of significance there. Really, what we want to focus in on is how is this related to Vision 5, which would be columns 3 over. So, right, column 3, what's the dialogue going on between Zechariah and the interpreting angel? The angel asks Zechariah, what do you see? Zechariah then describes what he sees in both Vision 5 and Vision 6, and then afterward the angel interprets the vision. So in Vision 5, he gives an oracle after Zechariah asks, what are these? After he describes what he saw in the vision. Vision 6, the angel explains that the scroll is a curse after Zechariah explains or describes what he saw in the vision. Similarly, there's a whole column on, are we talking about something tangible and seen or something intangible? The angelic riders are intangible and they're unseen. However, the next column, they are presently on the earth, or at least they were roaming the earth. So that in a way relates to Vision 6. Vision 2, the horns are simply foreign nations, so that's something known, that's something seen. Vision 3, you have the guy with the measuring rod. So that's not really known, not really something seen or tangible. However, he was headed to Earth, so he wasn't just going to stay put. He was actively on his way down to Jerusalem. So kind of similar. Vision 4 is talking about Joshua. That's not really known or seen. I mean that is known and seen. That's not really unknown or unseen. So not really like Vision 6. Vision 5, we have, Joshua and Zerubbabel are known and they're seen. Like those are the two olive trees. And then you have the eyes of God, which are not known and not seen. And then the current location of these, well, these are likely not on earth at all. So this is how, again, vision 5 is like vision 6. Is vision 6 also, you have the scroll, which is unknown, unseen, intangible in the present when this was given, and is also not yet on earth, right? The curses have not yet come. It's just sort of flying around, and then it's going to go out over the earth. And of course, the origin of all of these are either God or the heavenly council, which is God plus, basically. So anyway, that was sort of a helpful way for me, hopefully a helpful way for you to try to organize all of these thoughts. Number 4, right? How do we know that the scroll is from God? The sins that are being punished. So, right, again, sort of confirming that this is from God. Specifically, this is like a covenantal curse. There are 2 sins that are specifically called out here. It's theft and swearing falsely by God's name specifically. And in the Old Testament, there were curses that were placed on somebody who stole something. And oftentimes, if that person confessed, they were spared from the judgment of that curse, right? Judges 17, verses 1 and 2, right? There's this guy who stole some silver from his grandma, and he goes to Granny. He says, look, all that like 10,000 or whatever pieces of silver, I stole it. And he says, all that 10,000 pieces of silver that you placed a curse upon, I stole that, by the way. And rather than curse her grandson, or I think it's a grandson, I don't know. I swear I read this, and I was going to go back and actually copy and paste the passage, but I forgot to do that. So I'm doing this off of memory, but pretty sure it's like your grandson or something. Rather than curse grandson who stole all this, even though we know she already did place a curse upon the person who did it, she says, the Lord bless you instead. So, right, he confessed and he was spared from the judgment of that curse. Also in the Old Testament, people who were placed under an oath to testify were often threatened with being cursed by God if they lied under oath, right? In Numbers chapter 5, it talks about if, a man thinks his wife basically had an illegitimate child, you bring her before the priest, and the priest will get this scroll and do some stuff and make the woman eat it. And, basically if the woman is innocent and didn't do anything, then she's fine. But if she did, cheat on her husband, then she's gonna miscarry the baby basically. And so, right, basically, okay, you're basically, gonna swear yeah, I didn't do this. And then, okay, we're gonna put a curse on the scroll. Basically, you're gonna eat it, and we're gonna find out whether you're telling the truth or not. In 1 Kings chapter 8, again, this is another example of something that I made a note that I was supposed to go and copy and paste, and I didn't. But basically, if you had something against your brother, you would go to the temple, and you would both, basically swear an oath, and it said you would hear from heaven and basically decide, okay, who's actually telling the truth here. The one who wasn't telling the truth, you would bring on their heads what they have done, right? In other words, right, you would hear from God who's telling the truth and then punish accordingly. So, right, so both of these things, theft and lying under oath, essentially, were punishable by a curse from God, essentially, throughout the Old Testament. They brought curses. And so the curse that's going out over Judah into the house of the thief and the house of the one who swears falsely by my name, this makes a lot of sense. And again, just sort of proves that this is a curse from God. And, that's that. So anyway, that's the 6th vision. Are there any questions on that? It's, there's not quite as many moving parts as Vision 5, but these two visions, Vision 6 and Vision 7, and I guess I'll kind of reveal my hand a little bit early. There's a lot we don't know about these visions. I mean, this is, and I'm going to get into some of this later, but there's the whole last sort of question that I give you. Is Vision 7 the inverse of Vision 6? We don't really know because, there's a lot that we don't know about what is really the message or the purpose of these two visions. So there's not quite as many moving parts as something like Vision 5, but there's a lot unknown about what is the takeaway, even for the people in Zechariah's time. What is the takeaway? What's sort of the message of these visions? But we'll get into that. But anyway, is there any questions though? Because I know this is definitely confusing. So, okay, in that case, we'll read verses 5 through 11, the seventh vision, starting in verse 5. The angel who talked with me came out and said to me, "Lift your eyes now and see what this is that goes forth." So I asked, "What is it?" He said, "It is a basket that is going forth." He also said, "This is their resemblance throughout the earth. Here's a lead disc, lift it up, and this is a woman sitting inside the basket." Then he said, "This is wickedness." And he thrust her down into the basket and threw the lead cover over its mouth. And I raised my eyes and looked, and there were two women, coming with the wind in their wings, for they had wings like the wings of a stork, and they lifted up the basket between earth and heaven. So I said to the angel who talked with me, "Where are they carrying the basket?" And he said to me, "To build a house for it in the land of Shinar, where it is ready. When it is ready, the basket will be set there on its base." Excuse me. So yeah. How is this related to the previous visions? Well, number one, like Vision 6, we're not really dealing with encouragement and hope directly as much as we're dealing with sin. We're talking about sin. We're sort of dealing with Judah's sin problem. And that's, I guess, sort of the main focus of this vision, more so than I'm going to build up Joshua. I'm going to build up Zerubbabel. I'm going to build up the people of Jerusalem. So that's sort of the first thing. The second thing, we have the same intro as 5 and 6, in a sense. Right, I really stressed how 6 is related to 5, and they're sort of abstract, and you have things going on in the heavenly council that, not only does it feature the heavenly council, but it features stuff in the heavenly council that's not even on the earth. It's like totally abstract from our reality. Well, Vision 7 also starts out the same way, kind of. Zechariah doesn't say, "I lifted my eyes," but he's told, "Lift your eyes," right? The angel who talked with me came and said to me, "Lift your eyes now and see what it is that goes forth." Very similar, a little bit different, basically the same thing. However, it does break away from 5 and 6 by having Zechariah asked, "What is this?" Just like he does in Visions 1 and Visions 2. So we're dealing with things that are, or I guess, are we dealing with things that are on earth, right? Like the angelic horse riders were on the earth. Vision 1, Vision 2, the horns, the four nations were on the earth. Are we dealing with that, or are we dealing with things that are not on the earth, right? Vision 6, you have the curse, which is flying around in heaven, the heavenly council, and, right, it's going to go over Israel, it's going to go over Judah, going to go over the land, but we're not quite there yet. And then also partially 5, where you have, like, the eyes of God, which are originating from sort of the heavenly council, but aren't presently on the earth. Are we dealing with that? Or are we dealing with something that's actually like on the earth? I mean, because like we have mention of like places on the earth, like Shinar. What are we really dealing with here? Well, number 3, the basket's going forth. So it's going forth just like the scroll was flying above the heavenly council and would soon go over Judah. That's kind of like the basket. It's sort of going flying above the Heavenly Council in the sky, something like that. It's not like on the earth right now, right? It's just sort of, it's a basket that is going forth. And then, it says, this is wickedness, thrust the lady back down in the basket, covers it up. And then there's women that come with wind in their wings and they like fly the basket off. So we're not like on the earth. So like presumably this is sort of going forth again, sort of in the spiritual plane that I've been talking about. What's interesting is that the New King James has the interpreting angels say, let me find it real quick. This is their resemblance throughout the earth, the end of verse 6. Really, this is something like, this is their eye. And really, the meaning behind this is, this is not my quote. This is a quote from a commentator. I will add that. But just as the flying scroll, or more specifically, the curse from the flying scroll, seen by everyone, right? When it comes, it's going to come over all of Israel. Just as the scroll was meant to be seen by everyone, the removal of wickedness in a basket was meant to be witnessed by everyone. So we're dealing with something very similar to Vision 6, in that it's something that's in the present, in our plane of existence, unknown, right? We don't know that this is coming. Except for the fact that we're being told this. It's intangible, right? This isn't a nation. This isn't a person. We can't go visit this thing. Evil is personified as a woman here, although there was not actually a woman that God put in a basket and then shipped off to Shinar. I was going to make a joke, but I'm going to refrain. But anyway, okay. Unknown, intangible on our plane of existence. Very similar to Vision 6. And also very similar to Vision 6. It was not yet on the earth, but it would soon be coming, right? Vision 6, this is the curse that goes out over the whole face of the whole earth. Every thief shall be expelled. Every perjurer shall be expelled. I will send out the curse. It shall enter the house of the thief, the house of the one who swears by my name. It shall remain in the midst of the house and consume it with its timber and stones. So this is something that's coming, but it's not actually happened yet. It's just sort of, the scroll is just sort of flying out above in the heavenlies. Very similar to what's going on in verse 7. This idea of the personification of wickedness being taken away and moved to Shinar hasn't happened yet. So anyway, that's how it's similar to the previous vision specifics. Which then, is this sort of the inverse of Vision 6? And that's the last question. And this is where we don't really have a lot of answers. So, excuse me, I'm sorry, my voice is very dry tonight. Right, like I've said, some of the visions were primarily dealing with things that are already seen on the earth, nations, people, that kind of thing. Some of them were dealing with things and are already on the earth or are making their way to the earth, right? You have the horse riders that are unseen and intangible. We can't touch them. We can't really know them. They're from the Heavenly Council, but they're actually said to roam the earth. Likewise, you have the guy who's going to measure Jerusalem, and he's somewhere between heaven and earth before he's stopped, called back, hey, don't go. We have some things that originate from the Heavenly Council and have yet to appear on earth at all, such as the curses and now everything in verse 7. So if Vision 6 is following Vision 5, not only in terms of structure, but also in that some of the things seen in the visions are not on earth at all, and it's like completely abstracted from our plane of existence. Vision 7 is following Vision 6 even more so, to the point where you think it's almost like the inverse of Vision 6. Right? Vision 6 declares a coming curse over Judah. Vision 7 declares the wicked. Not only is it about to be removed, but it's about to be removed to Shinar. Oh, so is this actually positive or not? And that's sort of the question. Is the idea that the wickedness of Judah is so bad that Shinar will worship it? Basically acknowledging that Judah's wickedness is worse than their own, and therefore they're basically worshiping Judah's wickedness. Is that really the idea that's at play here? Or is it that the wickedness is just being removed? Similar to how Vision 5, the one called branch, is said to remove iniquity. And so the emphasis then is one of encouragement, right? So let's just start off. What is, or where is Shinar? Yes, it's Babylon. It was an ancient name for Babylon used in the Old Testament. Kind of died out. No one really used that, but it's used. Don't know why. Doesn't really matter. But that's basically, we're talking about Babylon. The house that's going to be built for the basket. We're likely talking about a temple. It's the same word oftentimes. Temple, house. I mean, not that it necessarily means temple, in the sense that, the word just means house, but elsewhere in the Old Testament, the word house is used for a temple. The temple of God sometimes is just, house. The word is just used. So then, right, is this a good thing or is this a bad thing? Is the emphasis, y'all are so wicked, y'all are so bad that I'm going to take up evil and I'm going to move it to Babylon and they're going to build a house and basically worship y'all's wickedness because as bad as they are, y'all are worse? Or is the point simply, I'm going to remove your wickedness, similar to how I'm going to remove your iniquity in that day? Maybe a bit of both, right? Obviously, so this isn't like entirely happy, fluffy encouragement. Don't worry about nothing. Obviously, this is pointing out a very serious sin problem in Judah, part of which has already been addressed in Vision 6. But it does offer a little bit of hope, right? You have the removal of wickedness. So, how does this relate to Vision 6? Does the curse just not happen? And instead of cursing Judah, wickedness is removed? Does the curse happen? Are the thieves and the false swearers cursed? And then the wickedness is removed? Who knows? We're dealing with the spiritual plane. We're dealing with things that are we can't wrap our minds around, right? All these set of 8 visions began with a merger of the spiritual plane, physical plane, by showing that the horsemen, the unseen angelic horse riders, are roaming over the face of the earth. They're wandering the earth. So already, your Vision 1 sort of establishes the theme of the unseen and the seen, the spiritual and the physical, these two planes of existence sort of merging into one. Likewise, Vision 3, it merges the spiritual and the physical. You have the man who's leaving what's presumably the heavenly council to go to earth, right? Sort of merging the spiritual plane of existence and the physical plane of existence. Vision 4 merges the spiritual and the physical. You have Satan, who are discussing Joshua. So sort of in the heavenly council, you have them discussing a person on the earth, right? And then Joshua is sort of purified for service, symbolically. The spiritual and the physical. You have the eyes of God. Now, I never really got into the eyes of God. I just kept bringing this up as an example of this is something that's in the heavenly council. It's not on earth. It's both unseen, intangible, and also completely abstract from our reality. And this is really where this is important, because what these eyes of God are said to do in Vision 5 is that they rejoice to see the plumb line in the hands of Zerubbabel. right? Vision 4 is all about sort of building up Joshua. You have in the heavenly council, Satan is trying to, the Lord said to Satan, "The Lord rebuke you, Satan. The Lord who has chosen Jerusalem rebuke you. Is this not a brand plucked from the fire?" Joshua is then purified for service and encouraged, right? Vision 5, right? It's all about Zerubbabel. And it said, right? Who has despised the day of small things? Verse 10 of chapter 4. These 7 rejoice to see the plumb line in the hand of Zerubbabel. They are the eyes of the Lord which stand to and fro throughout the whole earth. So, right, you have these things which, right, we don't really know what these are. Are these like just 7 people in the heavenly council? We don't really know. And like I said when we covered that, that's not really what's important. But what's important is that they are, right, sort of merging, again, the physical and the spiritual planes of existence, because in the heavenly council, just as you had Joshua being built up and purified and encouraged for service, in the heavenly council, you have these 7, whoever or whatever they are, basically rooting for Zerubbabel, right? They rejoice to see the plumb line in the hand of Zerubbabel, rebuilding the temple, right? Visions 6 and 7 merge the spiritual with the physical by declaring that the things that will happen on earth, things will happen on earth, but as of now, they have not happened, and they're kind of just flying or going forth the spiritual realm. God declares a curse in Vision 6, but he declares that wickedness is going to be removed in Vision 7. So, okay, Visions 4 through 7, right? This is Joshua's purified, the one with the olive branches and the lamps, and the thing about Zerubbabel, the curse that's going to go out over Judah, and then the wickedness being removed. Visions 4 through 7. They really kind of tell a complete little story, right? Joshua's purified for service as the high priest. He's a sign of the institution of the Messianic era in which iniquity will be removed. There's the abstract, but also the tangible. Joshua and Zerubbabel, from Vision 5. These are the ones who are the signs of the new age, right? Like we said, the Messianic age, you can't really put a starting point on it. Even way back, Joshua and Zerubbabel are sort of signs that the Messianic age is already on its way. This was signs of the new age, but also they were the leaders that would hopefully bring in some much moral reform to Judah. Joshua was symbolically purified by those in the heavenly council, and Zerubbabel had those in the heavenly council who rejoiced to see his work. And what all these visions have in common, once again, is the merger of the spiritual plane with the physical plane, ultimately culminating in the one known as branch, who we know as Jesus Christ, who will remove iniquity from the land. So is this supposed to be, once again, is this supposed to be positive or negative? Vision 7, is it supposed to be a radical condemnation of Judah's sin, or simply encouragement that their sin will be removed? Again, maybe a little bit of both. If branch removes iniquity, like it talks about in Vision 5, well, we know that branch is Jesus Christ, and we know that he was only able to remove iniquity by basically becoming that iniquity upon himself. Cross is both a positive thing and also a negative thing. It is positive in the sense that our sin is taken away, but it's also a radical condemnation of our sin, right? Is both a blessing and a condemnation in a sense. Similarly, wickedness personified in Vision 7 is carried away. This is both a blessing and a condemnation, right? it is a blessing that wickedness is being taken away. It's also probably a little bit of a condemnation that they said it was going to be taken away to Babylon. I mean, they had just lived in Babylon. They had lived among all of the wickedness, idolatry, paganism, moral laxity of Babylon. They had witnessed this for decades. And, right about the time they get home and get their bags unpacked, now, you're listening to Zechariah as he's telling this and saying, well, y'all are wicked. And, symbolically, of course, your wickedness is going to get packed up and it's going to get shipped to Babylon. And they're going to build a house for it and basically worship it, right? I mean, obviously, in the sense that, wickedness is taken away. That's good. But also, it's a little bit of a condemnation of how bad Judah is. Right. We don't really know what the message of these two visions are. Is it a message of encouragement, a message of condemnation? Probably a little bit of both. Some other things. Who are the women who carry away the wickedness? We don't know. It doesn't matter. It's probably just because wickedness is a feminine word in Hebrew. So the personification of wickedness would also be feminine, probably. Again, doesn't really matter. What matters is, once again, the spiritual and the physical are overlapping. The Messianic age is already, in a sense, beginning, right? And we, through Zechariah, are getting to peek at what the heavenly council is like and how it operates. You have things from the heavenly council that are sent to earth, but not on earth. You have things that from the heavenly council that are sent from earth and are roaming the earth. You have things from the heavenly council that encourage and build up or root for things on the earth, but are not they themselves on the earth. You have things from the heavenly council that are sort of swirling about in the sky, flying around, and are going to come to earth, but aren't on earth yet. And all these visions deal with basically the merger of our plane of existence and the unseen spiritual plane of existence. And ultimately, right, I mean, like we said, all these, from a timeline perspective, all of these sort of culminate, right, with the coming of the branch, right? Vision 5, it also, kind of talks about it in Vision 8. This is sort of, okay, we're building up Joshua, and you are a sign to this coming branch who will remove iniquity. We're building up Zerubbabel. You are a sign to this coming branch who will remove iniquity. So it's all sort of building up to this. And, like we said, that is ultimately where the spiritual and the physical met more than ever. I mean, when the Son of God literally became man and took on human flesh and, was tempted in every way as we were. That is not only is branch sort of the culmination from a chronological perspective of the 8 visions, but it's also sort of the ultimate culmination of, okay, if all of these 8 visions are talking about heaven meeting earth, so to speak, heaven meeting earth, that ultimately culminated in the incarnation of Jesus Christ at Christmas. So actually, I think it's pretty dang cool that we're talking about this like 4 days or whatever before Christmas. So anyway, because that is the ultimate example of heaven meeting earth, was when Jesus Christ was born into this world. So anyway, that's Vision 7. Like I said, there's a lot that we don't really know about these 2 visions. I still managed to get an hour out of you, though. So that's my Christmas gift to you. Merry Christmas. Any questions on that, though?
My version was talking about the basket, calls it a measuring basket.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's. Oh, it's in here somewhere. There's a word for it. I forget what it is. I don't know that there's necessarily any significance in the type of basket that it is. What's interesting is That specific, I forget what the word is. That specific type of basket, like the measuring basket that you're talking about, the average dimensions of that could not hold a human woman, an adult woman. So
It was more like a gallon or less.
yeah, I mean, I don't remember what the actual dimensions were, but yeah, I mean, it clearly couldn't have held an adult woman. So again, this does go to show you, I guess, don't read too literally into these visions because they are just visions after all. So anyway, but yeah. Okay.